Hello Booktube, I'm Scott.
I'm Nelle.
We are Gunpowder, Fiction and Plot. Now, because we'll forget to say this at the end, please subscribe to our video, please like, and please shoot us a comment about anything we discuss in this video. Today we're going to discuss audiobooks though, Nelle. Now, I'm an avid audiobook reader, and you...
It's not reading. I do object to the incorrect use of that verb. But I struggle. I can't seem to absorb the information when it is by sound. I need the book in front of me.
So you are an untrained audiobook reader.
Yeah, I'm certainly not against the idea of audiobooking, and I'm very jealous of the people who have figured out how it works for them. But I haven't figured out how it works for me yet.
Now, I know you didn't mean this when you said it's not reading. I know you are just being a pedant for the English language.
Yeah, what I mean is it's listening.
It's listening. But I would like to say that studies have shown that the activity of your brain while reading, whether it is reading a physical book in front of you or listening to an audiobook, is the same.
But you're not actually reading. You're being read to.
What does the verb reading mean?
It means that you are, with your eyes or your hands...
So you're inclusive of people who...
read Braille.
Braille, yeah.
You're interpreting the letters on a page into language.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm
just being pedantic. It doesn't actually matter. I certainly think that audiobooking is a valid way to consume literature. I just don't think that the verb to read is the appropriate description of what you're doing.
And I think if you consume an audiobook and you say you've read it, that's fine.
And we argue about this a lot.
Yes. So I consume a lot of audiobooks. I consume a lot of audiobooks because of the nature of my job.
Yeah, so definitely one of the reasons why you can audiobook and I can't is because I have to talk to people as part of my job, so I can't just chuck on some headphones and ignore the sound around me. Part of my job is managing staff, so...
Yeah, wherewith I can just... I spend a lot of my job driving. I can't audiobook the whole time I'm working, but I spend a lot of my job driving, and while I'm driving, I'm listening to an audiobook. 100% of the time, I am listening to an audiobook. The only exception is when I finish an audiobook and I don't have a chance to pull over and put on the next audiobook. That is the only time I am not.
Or if your darling wife is in the car and you're chatting to her instead.
Oh, yes. Yeah, when I'm on my own in the car.
Yeah.
So the first thing I thought it would be good to discuss is when.
Yeah, so I definitely think that there's a question of appropriateness, and you talk about doing it when you work, and that's not going to be appropriate for everyone.
It's great for me, but yes.
Yeah, but not only is your job an appropriate job for audiobooking, but you're also your own boss, so no one's going to tell you can't.
Exactly. You out there who is a barista and is like, yep, I'm bringing headphones to work, not taking any orders from customers, you're going to have a bit of trouble with that.
Yeah, but a lot of people... listen to audiobooks while they clean the house, or while they exercise.
Yeah. Well, I go for a run at least once a week, and I always whack my headphones on for that. If I walk the dog, often my dad comes over to walk the dog, and we walk him together.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, and I take him for a run or a walk, so it's actually the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and he maybe understood that word.
Whoops. I don't. I find it difficult to absorb the information, but particularly when I'm huffing and puffing, that's the last thing I want is something on my head or someone trying to talk to me.
Yeah.
So I do. I don't know. I wonder when I would listen, but.
Yeah, I think cleaning housework is actually a really good time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you listening to when you audiobook? I know that you listen to basically everything you read. But I've had to think about this from my perspective, and I wonder if we looked at Sarah Millican's...
So yeah, earlier the year I read Sarah Millican, How to Be Champion, the stand-up comedian.
Yeah, and I feel like I could probably listen to that because she's actually performing the words in a way that I've absorbed before because we've watched her stand-up comedy, and I'm only absorbing the information auditorily then. I know you're watching her, but...
I mean, I think that you underestimate how much communication, like right now you could be looking at the camera but you're looking at me.
Yeah, and I do tend to lip read as we go.
Yeah, I think you underestimate how much communication is non-verbal.
I personally lip read quite a lot, and I've noticed since the masks have been a requirement in our area that I do find it very difficult if I can't see someone's face.
Yeah, that's the same.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a great book to start on. I think with audiobooks, you have to think about it like a book. If you had never read a book before and somebody said, "Hey, Nell, I just read War and Peace, I think you'd like it," and you'd never read a book before, chances are you're going to be like, "Nah,
I'm not going to start with War and Peace.
I'm not smart enough to read War and Peace." But you just need to, like... It's the same as the gym. You know, you're not going to bench press 100 kilos the first week you walk in.
Yeah, okay. So start at the beginning. I guess the other thing that I considered starting with is nonfiction, because I feel like there are so many criteria for a fiction book to be good writing, but really almost the only criteria for a nonfiction book to be good writing is that it be clear and easy to understand. So yeah. I do think that maybe if I'm struggling to absorb the information, that might be the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the way to go. That is a great place to start. The other places you may wish to start is with YA, with authors that are a little bit simpler.
Yeah.
So, for example, the very first author I picked was Robert Louis Stevenson, probably not the author most people would think of as the most simplest, but for a Victorian writer, very simple. You know, something like The Hunger Games would be a great first novel to read on that. The other thing that I would say, though, is once you are reading audiobooks, once you can do it, then there's actually no limit on what you can do. But the experience of reading versus audioing is different.
It's a different experience.
It's a different experience. So some books are actually better suited to audio and some aren't. And an example, I was talking to Kate Howe on her review of Middlemarch.
Yeah.
And we basically agreed that this is an excellent example of a piece of literary fiction that you should be audiobooking. I mean, read it if you want to read it. But
yeah.
George Eliot, I don't know if the microphone can pick up Mr. Whippy going past.
Bye, I'm going to get an ice cream.
Is that a cultural thing that is just so Aussie, or is that another? I would love to know if you have a...
Do you have Mr. Whippy?
Do you
not have Mr. Whippy?
A man in the van playing green sleeves selling ice cream.
They will have to have. They probably don't call him Mr. Whippy.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an Australian brand name, even though
none of them are
even though that's not
Mr.
a business
Whippy.
anymore. Yeah. Anyway, like George Eliot's writing is very complex and is difficult to read, right? And then when somebody is reading it for you and you can listen to it, then you're not worried about her complex writing. You can enjoy her poetic writing. Does that make sense? So if you are struggling to read a complex book, you may wish to audiobook it.
One thing I have seen on BookTube a couple of times is people who do both simultaneously. And I suspect that would actually be really good for my brain.
Do you mean... Because
reading the physical book while listening to the audio and like literally reading along. I feel like that's like double inputs.
I actually feel like that would be a really good way to start to speed read too.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I've seen people who will like audiobook a book while they're driving, and then when they get to where they're going, they'll get out the book and they'll be like, oh, 2 more chapters, and find the spot they're up to and then read it, then fast forward the audiobook and go back and forth.
Sounds complicated.
I just don't know how you figure out where you're up to the whole time. But if you can manage to do that, kudos to you. That's...
So how fast do you listen to them?
So I think you should definitely speed up your audiobooks.
I think that this is something that's come up a few times as something that I'm probably doing wrong too.
Yeah, I think if you're not at least reading at times 1.25, then it's actually the slower the book is read, the more boring the book is. So you want to speed the book up.
So you don't get distracted.
Right. And you have 2 problems here. You have 2 limits. You have the physical limit that you can listen to words at.
Yeah.
Right? Which is very easy to train up.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have the physical limit that you can absorb words into your brain.
Which is faster than anyone can speak.
Which is faster than anyone can speak. So typically, I'll listen to books at about times 1.6. But... for example, the other week I put a book on times 2.4, and that's the fastest I've ever listened to a book. And at that point, I just could not understand. I could repeat the sentences,
but
I could not comprehend what was going on.
That's how I feel when I listen to all of audiobooks.
Well, the thing is, each audiobook will have a different speed.
Yeah.
Right? So when I said 1.6, that's just not true. Because, when I did North and Southland an audiobook, it was 1.4, right? Because I found that was the right speed for that narrator of that audiobook. But I think you have to experiment with the speed, put it up, put it down, play with it, and make sure you're happy with it. Because when you listen to them too slow, they can just get very boring and very slow, and your mind can wander. And by speeding it up, you're stopping your mind from wandering, and you're actually improving your experience quite a bit. And this is my number 1 tip if you are struggling to audiobook, is to turn the speed up, not down, up.
How do you make sure that you get good quality audiobooks that have people who can speak and read?
I mean, this is the same as how do you manage to get good quality books that you're reading. You know, you have to start to learn narrators. There are a lot of trusted narrators out there, and there are other things that you can look for. So, for example, if I see an audiobook that says full cast production, that is something that I always like, because that means that you have different people for different roles, and you might
you've got different voices for different characters.
Exactly. And that improves the quality, because then you can identify which character is speaking without waiting for the narrator to say, said Bob.
Yeah.
You know? So that is good. But you do learn which narrators are good, but you have to pick the narrators that work for you. We're in an international community, but when we go down the street to do our shopping or to, interact with our friends, they've all probably got the same or similar accents. And so your ears are very well trained to your regional accent. And then when you put on an audiobook, you might be listening to somebody from literally next door to literally half the world away. And, some accents, and a great accent is the Scottish accent, that can make excellent book. But if that accent is too strong...
And you can't understand what they're saying.
It is actually one of these accents that is so good until it's not, and then it's horrible. And no disrespect to Scottish people, I probably think that they may even agree that...
I think they're aware that some of us can't understand them.
But it's the same with all accents,
There's a limit of how thick you can...
I struggle with a Spanish accent. I just can't do that. So I think you need to know that. Also, with every audiobook, you can listen to a sample.
Ooh,
right?
sample.
And listen to, if you don't know who the narrator is, listen to a sample. You know, don't just buy it. Like, you want to make sure they're good. And to be honest, the sample is not going to tell you everything. You know,
No, but it gives you a good idea. It's like the page 112 thing we did with Sean. It's actually a really good way to tell what the quality of something is like.
But it's, for me, one of the most important things is that they change their voice for different characters, and they change it enough for me to be able to hear it. And that does mean that I prefer certain accents, because I can hear the subtleties in those accents. It also means that I prefer higher, more, like, it doesn't matter if you are the best audiobook narrators out there. It doesn't matter what accent you have, because you're going to be good enough, right? And I've listened to almost any accent on an audiobook, but for me, I definitely have my preferred accents, which is about what media I consume more of, and what accents.
It's about what you're used to.
Yeah, and that'll be different for everybody. But you will know what that is instinctively. You will know what accents that you
makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, yeah. Did you have other questions, or
was there anything else you wanted to say? What other things?
So,
can you help me on my journey with?
Yeah. There are some other things. A lot of people I've seen on booktube, and I think this is actually an excellent tactic, is that when they're picking up an audiobook, it is often a reread for them. It's often...
Yeah, I've considered that. I think that might be a good way to go, is to try a reread.
Yeah, I actually think, because I don't believe that the audiobook experience of a novel and the reading experience of a novel is the same. But I don't believe that the reading experience of a novel today and the reading experience of the novel in 6 months are the same either.
Yeah, I agree.
And I have great difficulty, for me, determining if I read and I audiobook and I have a different experience, how much of that is about when I was reading,
and how much is about how.
And even how much is it if I audio first and then I read, or if I read first and then I audio, what effect does that have? But I do see a lot of people rereading on audiobook, and I think that is an excellent use of it. I also think that it's an excellent use to do it the other way around.
I think for someone who's struggling with it a bit, I think rereading something that you're familiar with sounds like an easy way in as well.
Yeah.
And I'm very keen to get audiobooking, because it just increases your ability, like the number of books you can fit into your life.
That's it.
And that has to be a good thing.
And if you think about it, if you're audiobooking, if we go back to what we were talking about at the start, if you're audiobooking while you're driving and while you're doing housework, and while you're exercising, you're probably audiobooking for a book's length a week. There's probably 52 books a year you could audiobook if you do it in all those times. Now, I know one of the things that I've heard people say is, I don't audiobook because I booktube. But for me, if I'm booktubing, half the time I want to comment on what somebody's saying. And if I'm going for a run, I'm not. And a lot of the time, I actually want to watch. I don't want to listen, I want to watch.
I need to be able to see my booktubers' faces.
But I will I
need your faces.
Yeah, I will booktube while I'm having breakfast, for example.
Yeah.
I could audiobook in that time as well, but that is a time I pick to booktube.
Yeah. Or any time your wife wants to have a conversation.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say is DNFing is different with an audiobook than it is for a physical book, in my opinion. In my experience, rather.
Yeah. With
a physical book, I sort of start to avoid it and start to think that I don't want to read it, and then that's it. I DNF it. Because in my life, I have certain activities that I am audiobooking on, and I know that I'm going to do those activities every week, and that is my audiobook time.
Yeah.
I am audiobooking 100% of those times.
And you're not bouncing between different titles.
But if I'm going for a run, I'm not pulling over at the side of the run going, this book is rubbish, I'm changing books. I have to do that at the end of the run.
Yeah, okay.
So often I will listen to a book that I am not enjoying longer when I am audiobooking it. And that's just the experience you're having. And sometimes it can change your mind even, but usually once you've decided to DNF a book, it is
a stinker.
It doesn't come back from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a different experience. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's our discussion on audiobooks.
Do you audiobook? What's your tips for me to get into audiobooking? How many books do you audiobook? Tell me all the things.
Yeah. All right, pretend that we have a cool outro.
Bye.
Bye.